Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about life and how to live a good one, whether you're doing the homesteading thing or not. I am Amy Dingman. I live in central Minnesota on a 5-acre homestead. And here on this podcast, we talk about that kind of stuff, but we also just talk about life, because it doesn't matter where you're living a life, and we need to live a good one. I did not record a podcast episode yesterday. Things were very busy on the farm over the holiday weekend, and we got so many projects done, and I'm really happy for that. So I'm not sad that I didn't get a podcast done, but here is your podcast for the week. This is episode 280. The topic today is, you're probably on the wrong path. And we will get to what I mean by that. But first, what's been happening on the Lifestead? Well, I did get the garden planted. It's a little bit earlier than I normally plant, but I figured the weather was going to be good, so I was going to get it in the garden. All those seedlings that I had started really needed to get in the garden, and so put them out there. Was super excited to get that done. Of course, it took me longer than I thought it was going to, because that just seems to be what happens now as I get older, and also because I'm very unrealistic. So I say, I'm going to do this thing in 20 minutes, right? And it takes you 2 hours. That's just what happens. But anyway, so I got the garden planted, and about 6 hours later, we got this storm that popped up, right? I knew it was supposed to rain. I didn't know we were supposed to get a storm. And what actually came with the storm was a whole bunch of wind. We had 2 days of really big wind, okay? So when you plant tomato seedlings and you get a whole bunch of wind, you are very sad. Because what happens to a lot of your tomato seedlings is they bend right over. Now, they didn't really snap off, but they did bend. They put a little crease in there, and so they were kind of, laying on the ground. And I was real sad about that. What I have done to remedy this, hopefully, is I dug those tomato plants up that had kind of bent over, and I actually dug them up and I reburied them deeper. So wherever they had kind of, I don't want to say snapped off, because they didn't actually snap off, but where they had bent over, I buried them down to that point, so that kind of almost break was underneath the ground now, because I was told by some people that that's just what you need to do, and it's going to be fine. So rather than being very sad that a good chunk of the seedlings that I had planted were now useless and I had to go buy some to replant those, we're going to go with it, and hopefully the advice that I got, that is just rebury them a little bit deeper, and they should root and it should be fine. We're going to go with that. So hopefully that is what happens. It's very interesting this year. The garden has only been in for a few days, right? And I already know that this gardening season is going to be completely different than the last 2 years have been. For the last 2 years, we were in a drought, right? We had very, very, very little rain. I had to water the garden if it needed a drink, right? This year, I think we're going to get too much rain, because those seedlings already look like, y'all have already gotten a little too wet. Now, the thing with a drought is, if you have a water supply, you can water, right? I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do when you're getting too much rain. It's not like you can take the water out of the soil, right? So I think this is going to be a real interesting year. I hope the garden makes it. I hope we have a little break in the rain here, because I would like all these seedlings that I started to produce me some food. What else happened on the Lifestead lately? We did a little project where we fixed up the front of our house. We have a little sitting area outside of our house where we will have coffee or cocktails, depending on what's going on, what time of day it is. And we always wanted to make that just a little bit more, not look like a total redneck kind of, whatever. There was rock there and there was grass there, but the grass was really patchy and the rocks were kind of all over, and there was weeds, and it was just messy. And we've just kind of gone with it because we really haven't had time to fix it, and it wasn't a huge priority. But we decided this year, you know what, we're gonna spruce that up a little bit, make it a little bit fancy. I mean, we're not super fancy here. And we also had this area that's kind of around our well, that area. We also wanted to do something with that. We wanted to put like a planter box around it or something, so it wasn't just this thing in the middle of the yard that always had weeds around it and people would back into it because they didn't realize that it was there. And so we spruced that up a little bit. The goal was to spruce it up a bit, but not spend a lot of money, because I don't like to spend a lot of money. And also, have you seen the price of groceries? Y'all, have you seen the price of groceries? So we did end up using a lot of stuff that we already had around the farm, and that is always fun. We did buy some landscape timbers, we did buy some mulch, but everything else was stuff that we had around the farm. So I did post pictures of that online. It was super fun to get that done. Huge project. I was exhausted after it got done. It's just so much more work now to get things done. I wish I would have known this when I was 30. I would have done more. No, that's not true. I did plenty when I was 30. It's funny how it just becomes more work as you get older. I was thinking the other day about how when we moved here, there were all these things we wanted to do. And the really cool thing is that we always said, you know, it would be cool to have fruit growing on our farm, right? We moved here, did not know that we had a huge raspberry patch, discovered that the first year that we were here. Oh my gosh, we have all these raspberries. That's awesome. We did move grapevines here, so we knew we were going to have that. But that's pretty much what we had, raspberries and grapes. Well, now my husband and I were sitting here thinking and talking about just all the stuff that we've done on the farm over the last 13 years that we've been here. And it was just really cool to make this list of, hey, here's the fruit that we currently have planted on the farm. Not all of it is producing yet, but theoretically, all the fruit that we have on the farm currently is grapes, apples, cherries, blueberries, raspberries, pears, and strawberries. Isn't that a great list? And I was thinking about how you start off on the homestead and you're like, oh, we have all the stuff we want to do. And it's just the craziest thing, because 13 years later, you sit down and you're like, wait, look at all the stuff that we've done. Look at all the stuff that we've started and that is going to be happening for us. So that was super fun. All of that to say, y'all, if you are just starting out on your homestead or wherever, it takes time to build a life, right? And you're going for it and you're going for it and you're going for it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, look, we have all these things that we wanted to have. So that was a fun realization. Last thing that I'm going to say before we get to the main topic is, if you are listening to this on Tuesday, I want you to know that tomorrow, Wednesday, May 29th, I'm going to be streaming live with Nicole from Living Free in Tennessee. We are doing the return of the Spicy Sisters. So we'll be hanging out, live streaming, talking about life, talking about stuff that's going on. It has been way too long since I could sit down to have a chat with Nicole. So really looking forward to doing that. Check it out. It's tomorrow, Wednesday, May 29th at 2 p.m. Central. I will stick a link in the show notes for that. Otherwise, just go to my YouTube channel, or it's going to be on Nicole's YouTube channel as well. And check that out. Get involved in the conversation. Have a little fun. So yeah, that's what will be happening. All right, now it's time to head over to the main topic and talk about why I think you and me are probably on the wrong path. Lately, I have been kind of skimming a book called The Principle of the Path, okay? And I don't say reading because it's real hard for me to read now, because I lay down in bed with all these great intentions of reading and I fall asleep 3 minutes later. So I'm kind of skimming through this book, kind of picking up the high points. But this book, The Principle of the Path, said something really interesting that I've been thinking about for a couple weeks. It said, there is a huge difference between what we say we're going to do or what we think we're doing and what we're actually doing. And very often, the reason that we don't end up where we want to be is because we're not actually on the path to get there. We all have plans, we all have goals, we all have things we say are super important. And we think about these things all the time, but the things we are thinking about or saying aren't necessarily reflected in our actual hands-on life. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, if someone was to take a bird's eye view of your day, okay? someone who's not necessarily very close to you, someone just random in your life, if they were to take a bird's eye view of your day, just a normal day in your normal life, what would they say about you if they watched you? What would they say about you? Would they be able to tell, without asking you, what your goals are? Would they be able to tell, without asking you, what your priorities are? Or what your aspirations are? Or what's important to you and what gets your focus? Or what you're aiming for? Or what kind of person you are? Would they be able to tell those things without asking you by watching the way your day plays out and the way you live? And would the things that they say after watching your day, would those things line up with the things that you are telling people are your goals and your aspirations and your priorities? Would the things that someone would say after watching you for a day, would those things line up with the things that you believe about yourself and what you're doing? I wonder. I mean, you might be someone who believes you're super creative and you have all these great ideas and you have so many plans and you're a go-getter and you are going to start the next big thing. And you have been trying to start the next big thing and it just never works out and you don't understand why. And if someone was to take a bird's eye view of your life, they might watch you for a while and they might come back with, yeah, you're really creative. You have a ton of ideas and you go really hard on these things for about 3 weeks. But then you get bored and you get distracted and you move on to the next thing. Those are the things people who aren't us can look at our life and see about us that we can't see. Some of us do not look at our life with that kind of honesty. Some of us don't even have the perspective to look at our life with that kind of honesty. Sometimes there's this giant elephant in the room that we don't even know is there, but everyone else does because they're on the outside of our life looking in and they can see things that we don't see and things that we can't see. What path are you on? What is the destination you want to end up at? Whether I'm talking about the end of the day or the end of the week, the end of the year, 10 years from now, the end of your life, what's the destination you want to end up at? And is the path you are truly walking, day in, day out, actually walking, is that the path that's going to get you there? Saying that you're going to take care of a giant garden and some chickens and some rabbits sounds really great. But if every night when you get home from work, you sit on the couch and watch 4 hours of Netflix because you're exhausted, it's not going to get you there. And that seems so obvious. But when you are in the middle of it, when your head is saying that's what you're going to do and your head is motivated and your head is all about it in a way that almost makes you believe that somehow you're going to have that giant garden and some chickens and some rabbits and it's all going to work out. And then you go and get the giant garden and some chickens and some rabbits and you don't understand why it's not working. And the person who's taking the bird's eye view of your life says, well, that's because you're working 95 hours a week and you come home exhausted and you collapse on the couch. You're not even on the right path to make this happen. I really want to stress here that it's easy to see when it's someone else and it's not so easy to see when it's us. Because our brains are powerful. And they will make us believe that we're on the path to the things that our brain says we want. I have a friend who, when we first met, I had this impression of him that he was this huge go-getter. He had tons of ideas. He had his fingers into a million different things. And I kind of thought that one day he's going to rule the world, right? But as I got to know him better and spent way more time around him in person, I realized that 75% of what came out of his mouth never happened. It never went further than some idea that he just spouted out of his mouth. And in his mind, he was really changing things because he was caught up in all these ideas in his brain. And me, the person with the bird's eye view of the path he was actually walking, I got to the point that I knew most of what came out of his mouth was just talk. Those are two very different things, right? What's in your brain and what you believe is happening is sometimes very different from the path you need to walk to make that happen. Maybe you want family gatherings to be like the old days, right? We all talk about that. Maybe you like the idea of having people over for a big fried chicken dinner and all the kids running around the yard and all of that fun. But every time someone invites you to their house or says, hey, we're in the area, we thought maybe we'd drop by, you think of every excuse to be busy. Is that any of you? The idea of something and the doing of something are not the same thing. The path doesn't line up. Maybe you've said you want to have a better relationship with your kids, or you want to have a better relationship with your spouse or your significant other. And yet, when they come through the door from school or work or wherever they have been, you don't even look up from what you're doing. See, the idea of something and the doing of something are not the same thing. The path doesn't line up. Now, sometimes the path doesn't line up because there's like this glitch between where your brain wants to be and where your feet actually are, like where they're actually walking, right? But sometimes it's a life stage thing. I mentioned in the beginning that we recently redid some stuff on the front of our house and in our yard. And I had a friend who messaged me and she said, oh my gosh, it looks so beautiful. Great job. I keep wanting to do that. And she said her front porch and her yard, they're such a disaster, right? Oh, it's such a disaster. And I said, you have a brand new baby and a 2-year-old. My kids are 20 and 21. I have time and a little extra money to fix this up, right? So sometimes you're not on the path that you want to be on because that's not where you're supposed to be right now. You have all these ideas, you have this vision of what you want to do, and you're not actually on that path because that's not where you're supposed to be right now. So we'll add that little caveat. But this all takes honesty. Do you do the things you say you want to do? Are you on the path you say that you are on? Are you actually on that path? Are your brain and your feet connected? Are you actually living in a way that aligns with your goals? And this isn't just about, I want to start a business or I want to get some chickens. This applies to anything. Sometimes we're on the right path, but we're spinning our tires in the mud. That happens. That absolutely happens. But sometimes we're going to look at our life and realize, oh, hey, the path to the thing I want to do is like way over there. I'm not even on the right path, honestly. And that's what this takes, is honesty. And maybe talking to somebody else who is not you, who is willing to be honest with you, and you saying, here's what I want to do. When you look at my life, what do you see? What do you see as important to me? What do you see as maybe the drawback of what I'm trying to do? What do you see as the struggle here? You may have somebody in your life who's willing to say, yeah, you're a go-getter, but you know what? You get really distracted. Or you say you want to do this, but this part of your life doesn't really line up with that. And maybe explain that to me, like how you can have a really great conversation. So if you have someone in your life who can do that, that's awesome. Tap into that. That's a really great resource. But as you listen to this podcast episode and you process a little bit, I'm really interested to know what things in your life you have figured out that your path doesn't really line up with the destination that you want to reach, or that you figured out, I'm not even on the path I say I want to be on, or the path that I'm on now is not going to lead to this thing that I want to do. And so I would love to know what those things are. So if you want to email me, it's amy@afarmishkindoflife.com, or find me on social media. I would love to know what this podcast episode kind of inspired in you. So there you go. That's what I have for you today. I hope things are going great wherever you are. I hope that you are doing all that you can to live a really great life and help people and be awesome and all that, because we need more of that in the world. All right. Thanks for hanging out, you guys. I will talk to you again soon. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com, find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media, or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay farmish.